actually having a racket where the racket has to be up, you have to be positioned right, then you have to swing, you have to watch the trajectory of the ball, you have to see the height of the ball, where do you want to hit it, you have to think 2 or 3 steps ahead. I was like, this is perfect sport for me because it's the same thing I have to do in business.
Welcome to another edition of Boast About It. Here, this time we are with Gillian Francis, member of the of Open Squash here and founder of her own venture capital firm. Gillian, welcome.
Hi, how are you doing, James?
I'm good. I'm good. So, Gillian, I thought we'd start by finance bros are in the news at the moment, and you're the
Right.
antithesis of what that is.
Very true.
So, I thought we'd start about how did you get into finance in the first place and your progression sort of from those entry-level jobs to where you are today.
Sure. So I'll take it back a little bit. My parents are from the Caribbean. I was born in London, and we came here. And if you know the Caribbean background, you're either going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. And so after some time taking anatomy, didn't really like anatomy as much, or physics, I decided with law. And so I came out wanting to do law, and I ended up at a commodities brokerage firm. And then I said, I like the energy of the trading floor, and I decided to continue with trading.
That's fascinating because that's a hard job, trading commodities.
Yes,
I mean, that's a
yes.
super high pressure, high stress
Yes, I was
thing.
actually on the compliance side of it. So it's even more stressful because you have to face finance bros that are saying, I want to put this position on, we have to do this position, and I have to make sure that it's within regulatory compliance. And
I kind of love the image of you saying no to a finance bro.
I know.
Yeah, I kind of love it.
I know. And I'm only like 5'4", and you know they're always a lot bigger. And so I worked there for a bit and then went over to JP Morgan and started to do more business development and expanding our trading practices into Montreal and some other international divisions. And then I decided I didn't want to make rich folks richer anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And said I was going to go back to business school. I went to Tuck Business School at Dartmouth. Well, after graduating from business school, wanting to do venture capital in underserved markets, international as well as domestic. I went to Grenada for about a year and tried to start a fund there.
You did. I saw you did start a fund there, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And there was a key man issue. The principal, one of the principals, became ambassador to the U.S.
I was intrigued by
so-
that. I saw you did it for a little over a year, and now I
Yes.
understand why that was
Yeah,
was a little
yes.
shorter.
And
But
the
that-
Caribbean wasn't really ready for private equity is what I was trying to do. I wasn't even in the VC space yet.
Yeah.
I think there's a better opportunity now that technology has advanced and there's more opportunity, less brain drain that was happening.
Sure.
So I think, I will go back to that a little bit later. Yeah.
Then what happens?
Then I come back here to the US. I applied to Citigroup.
Yeah.
Citigroup actually had City Community Capital, which was putting money back into underserved communities, disadvantaged communities.
Give us an idea of a couple of places, geographic locations.
I mean, there are some right here in New York City,
like the
right?
Bronx,
Brownsville,
Detroit.
New Orleans now,
Yeah.
Philly, so North Philly.
Sure.
We were also putting money into real estate funds that were creating affordable housing. Initially, it was mostly affordable housing, but then there were situations where we realized affordable housing alone, a standalone, without some kind of mixed use underneath it, were creating food deserts as well as like services deserts. While I was at Citi, one of the avenues that we used and tools that we used was the new market tax credit to create more of building out of cities and services and infrastructure that was needed to really build a neighborhood.
Was there a project there that you were particularly proud of? Or
Yeah, I was actually part of one of the first new market tax credits to be done, and that was with Boricua College. So we built the college for them in the
nice,
Bronx.
nice. High
Yeah.
five. I live in the
Oh,
Bronx.
do you?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So this is the
Nice.
Melrose area
Yeah.
of the Bronx at the time that, Melrose wasn't really a good location.
Yeah.
But now, as there's
Well,
more
thanks to
wealth coming
investments
in,
like this.
investments,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
starting
yeah.
to build it up.
So it seemed like that Citibank job was sort of right in your sweet spot, but you decided to move on from there. So where'd you
I
go
did.
from there?
At that time, there was also a talk about energy efficiency and how we could start to decarbonize some of the buildings that we were actually a part of. And then also, solar started to come about as well. And we invested in venture capital firms and funds that invested in solar. The first to invest in Tesla, we actually invested in, which is DBL, a double bottom line fund.
Yeah.
And some others that we also invested in. And they started to invest in solar panels, solar development, and light wind. Had the opportunity to go to Lockheed Martin, not on the missile and fire side, but on the energy and energy efficiency
And
side.
you were there for quite a long time,
I
right?
was. I was there for 10 years, but in different capacities. So I started out as a strategy, and that's where I worked with startups and finding startups that could help Lockheed and the utilities that we worked with energy efficiency and renewable energy mandate.
That seemed to have really sparked your interest because you're still in that space now,
That's
right?
and that's yeah, and that's
You,
the space.
yeah,
Yes, that
yeah,
I did some energy storage there as well. So it was good, not coming from a technical side. I was a political science major.
yeah. And so after 10 years there, you decided to go out and go back into financing others, basically, right?
Yeah, so I actually worked at Uptake Alliance, which was an accelerator, and as managing director. And then that's when I started to see the real barriers to commercialization for startups that are early stage and they're in the phase of scaling, right? So they need to do pilots, demonstrations, and they need funding for that. And so the barriers to commercialization are the funding, it being non-dilutive is better for them.
Yeah.
And so Rapid Ventures, which is a venture studio that I co-founded, that's what we look at. We look at really trying to provide that non-dilutive funding in the form of grants, new market tax credits or tax credits, ITC, which is investor tax credits for solar and wind. And then the added piece to what Rapid Ventures does is we want to bring those technologies to disadvantaged communities because that's where we need to really decarbonize. And then with that, we can create economic development. We can bring jobs for this new energy transition to underserved communities. And then that's when the wealth building creation starts.
It's fantastic. I really, really think that's fantastic. So somewhere on this journey,
Right.
you started playing squash.
Yeah, it was while I was at Lockheed Martin. So I was a runner since I was 9. I loved it until I got bored of it. And so probably in my mid 30s or so, I was kind of getting bored and needed something else. I had a friend that said she used to go to these tennis camps, right? And I was like, oh, that's fun. Tennis, socializing,
Yeah.
and actually having like instruction. And I thought about tennis. Well, I'm not going to have a serve like Serena. Let me think of something else. And I was like, okay, let me try these squash camps. They're going to be fun. And I fell in love with it. And
What
so
was your first squash camp?
I did one with World Enjoyer in Spain because they're
Nice.
international ones, right?
Nice.
And
That must have been fun.
it was really fun. I met Paul Cole there.
This,
Now
by the way,
Guinness.
is one of the
Yeah.
things I love about squash. Is
Yeah.
you're not going to meet Roger Federer
No.
at a tennis
No,
camp,
you're not.
but
But
you are going to
Paul
meet Paul Cole
right?
at a
And
tennis
you
at a
meet,
squash camp.
Camille Serm, you meet, Gina
Yeah.
Kennedy. I mean, these are amazing people that
Just
you get
so
to meet.
we were just seeing Gina Kennedy downstairs at Open Squash half an hour ago. So, yeah.
Exactly. And the camp, though I didn't know at the time, it was brutal. It was 3 hours on the court, 2 hours of training, right? Conditional training, strength training. You took a break and then you went back for 3 hours or so on the court. So this was for a week. And I realized I really like the intensity of that. Actually having a racket where the racket has to be up, you have to be positioned right, then you have to swing, you have to watch the trajectory of the ball, you have to see the height of the ball, where do you want to hit it? You have to think 2 or 3 steps ahead. I was like, this is perfect sport for me because it's the same thing I have to do in business and in finance and with startup world. You have to think 3 or 4 steps ahead.
So when was this camp in Spain that you went to? What year?
2018, I believe.
2018. So you've been
Yes.
playing squash for 6 years.
Yes. Initially, where I saw I kind of did a misstep was for a good year, I just took lessons. I didn't play anybody. And then I went to the Rothenburg.
The Rothenburg is a tournament here in New York.
Yeah. I actually played my first match and I was like, why are they not hitting the ball to me? Right? Because I am used to my instructor hitting the ball to me, right? Drills,
Are you serious?
cross
You only
court,
took lessons and then went to a tournament?
1 year of lessons only.
Wow.
1 year of lessons. So
And your
the
first game
strategy,
was
first
in a
game was
tournament.
in a tournament. I think I got 1-11, 2-11, and then maybe 4-11. So at least progressively I
So you
was getting
started
up.
to get the
Yeah, I
idea.
started to get the
Yeah.
idea that they're not going to hit it to me. I actually have to boast and I have to
You
run for the
didn't
ball.
complain about it, did you?
No, I didn't complain. I realized this is going to be a challenge because for running, I was 9, ran around, a track, and they were like, wow, you're good. And so it was always easy for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about squash. It's never easy, ever, right? What was good, though, after that whole year was my rails were really straight and tight to the wall. So rails are good.
I was going to say, a year of lessons isn't bad.
Yeah.
Just maybe add a
No, but you
couple
got to
of
add,
things.
right? You have to add some challenges there. You have to actually be able to read the court.
Yeah.
So 2018, I actually visited a lot of different, squash clubs.
Yeah.
So New York Sports and Racket. and
Open
a few
squash didn't
others.
exist back then.
Open squash didn't exist.
Nope.
Went to the Y, the one on 63rd,
Yeah.
West Side Y.
Yeah.
And had a good experience, met a few people there, super friendly, higher level than me, but hey, welcoming. And then I was like, okay, I will stay here because it's just that kind of atmosphere. And then when the pandemic hit, that's when Open Squash opened.
Yeah, we
right?
opened in January and
You
shut in
did,
March.
January.
Yeah.
And then, all the other clubs weren't open. And I said, okay, let me try this summer thing that they're offering.
Oh, that's right, because we were the first place to reopen with pretty strict rules.
Oh, it was very strict.
In July of 2020.
N95. So
Yeah, you had to wear a
which
mask.
was great for your lung capacity, right?
Yeah.
And then also you could train on your own. Yeah, there were great protocols here, so it felt safe. No one else was open. Even when other people open, I said, I'll stick with open. There's a lot of training here. And then we started to think about how do we build a women's community? And I got involved in that. And so I'm co-captain of the women's program here, along with Lauren. And yeah, so I'm very involved. Love the sport, love the community.
I'm going to ask you some leading questions. I've heard lots of things about the women's community, but as someone who's leading it, how do you feel the women's community is here compared to other places?
There's no comparison. This is the best women's community, and is really the hub for women that come to New York. One of the things that we would like to do is really get a pipeline of the younger women that are coming to New York for jobs. So women that are coming out of university, and be that, hey, come through here, maybe start to offer, and I think we do summer programs for them, and then have them have an allegiance to Open.
Fantastic. Makes me so happy. As you know, I'm one of the founders here at Open Squash, and one of the whole points was to make the sport more accessible and to make it more representative. Too many people who play squash look too much like yours truly here.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
really wanted to do something about it. So it's just great to hear.
And even on the women's end, you have we had women that played in university or played before. We had a quite a good like community of those women, but then we didn't have ones that wanted to start. You know, it's really intimidating to start squash
Yeah.
in your 30s
Yeah.
or in your late 20s,
Yeah.
where you can't even hit the ball. I mean, I remember the first time I started, and I was like, this is going to be easy. And I was swinging air
With
for a really
with
long time
what?
in that session. And so it was just like, and I was like, oh, what's going on here? I was like, what? How could I not hit this? So imagine that coming to, open squash, and you see, Gina Kennedy, or you see Nicole, Bunyan, or you see even, the folks that were top at Smith College. We have a lot of Smithies here. Hello. Seeing them, and you're just like, oh my gosh. But I like how open is open, and it is an open community. And we're like, don't worry about it. And you have those players playing with, lower level, because they'll put conditions on. And that's one thing that's good about squash too. You can have a higher level player play with a lower level, and they just have to put on conditions, right? They can only hit above the cut. They can only boast when you drive, whatever it is, right? And then you're both growing. And that's what's really, really
I love that.
accessible
I
about
have
that.
some much better squash players that I play with. I call the game torture,
Yeah.
where I can put the ball anywhere,
Yes.
but they have to keep it deep.
Exactly. Exactly. It's perfect. It's perfect. And they get a good workout.
Yeah. It's really great. Well, before we wrap up, is there something that the squash community in general and the open squash community specifically can do for you?
Yeah, sure. I think, wanting to do what I'm doing in the disadvantaged communities and really bring climate tech solutions to those to create economic development and workforce development, job creation. We need some grants, actually. So anyone out there that is part of a philanthropic organization, we'd love to, propose a grant so we can get this venture studio started, hire some folks, and really, excel.
If you're in the grant business, if you're helping nonprofits, see if you can do anything to help your fellow squash player, Gillian.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
James. Take care.
Okay.